December 20th, 1943. Airspace above Bremen, Germany. Second Lieutenant Charles "Chuck" Yeager yanks his P-51 Mustang into a violent left bank as neon-orange tracer fire rips through the sky where his cockpit had been a moment earlier. He's only 19. This is his 8th time in combat. His hands tremble so hard he can barely keep hold of the control stick. Behind him is a Messerschmitt Bf 109, flown by Unteroffizier Ludwig Francisquet, a seasoned hunter with 11 kills to his name. Francisquet has been stalking Allied fighters for 2 full years. He knows every trick pilots are trained to use. He's already lining up the shot that should end Yeager's life. The rulebook makes one thing absolutely clear. Stay in formation, move with your wingman, and maintain a coordinated strike pattern. The United States Army Air Forces drilled these tactics into every pilot, believing survival depended on obedience and precision. Straying from the formation was considered foolish, borderline suicidal. Yeager's fuel is dwindling. His ammo readout shows 60 rounds left. The closest friendly aircraft is 3 miles away. According to everything pilots have been taught, Yeager has no more than half a minute to live. What Francisquet couldn't possibly know, what no one yet realized, is that Yeager is about to ignore every rule in the combat manual and do something so reckless that senior officers later refuse to believe his report. What he's about to attempt will accidentally reshape fighter tactics for the next 8 decades. Before that moment can make sense, we need to understand how December 1943 became the deadliest chapter of the air war for the United States. By the end of 1943, the U.S. Army Air Forces were staring at a catastrophe that threatened to collapse the entire strategic bombing campaign. The numbers were horrifying. During the Schweinfurt-Regensburg raids of August 1943, the 8th Air Force lost 60 B-17s in a single day, 600 crewmen killed or captured. Another raid in October cost 62 bombers. Deep strike missions were losing 1 out of every 5. At that pace, bomber crews stood practically zero chance of surviving their required 25-mission tour. The core of the crisis was range. P-47 Thunderbolts and P-38 Lightnings could escort bombers only to the edges of German airspace. The moment American fighters turned back for lack of fuel, the Luftwaffe descended with overwhelming force and tore into the bomber groups. The arrival of the P-51 Mustang, with its tremendous fuel capacity and long range, seemed to promise salvation. But there was another problem. A hidden one, much worse than fuel limits. American fighter doctrine was fundamentally broken. The tactics textbook, written by leaders who had earned their wings in the 1920s, focused on flying in tight formations and executing perfectly coordinated turns and attacks. Pilots were expected to remain locked into their positions and follow formation leaders like chess pieces on a board. Personal initiative wasn't just discouraged, it was treated as recklessness. Meanwhile, German fighter philosophy, refined in years of combat from Spain to Russia, prioritized adaptability, opportunism, and fast aggression. Luftwaffe masters like Adolf Galland and Günter Rall pioneered the finger-4 formation and energy-based maneuvering, giving them an enormous advantage. The kill ratios reflected it brutally. In late 1943, experienced German fighters averaged 3 to 4 kills for every plane they lost. Aces like Egon Meyer and Walter Nowotny reached 10 to 1 or higher. American commanders sensed something was wrong. After-action reports showed U.S. pilots being defeated even in machines equal or superior to the enemy's. The official response insisted the tactics were correct. Pilots simply needed more discipline and training. They were dead wrong. And the person who would prove it wasn't a graduate of West Point or a privileged Ivy League pilot. It was a kid from a coal mining ridge in Hamlin, West Virginia. Charles Elwood Yeager seemed like the last person destined to rewrite aviation history. Born into a poor Depression-era family, his father worked long hours in coal and gas fields. Chuck hunted squirrels and rabbits to help keep his family fed, developing a jaw-dropping ability to track motion and distance. He could spot a squirrel's ear twitching in a treetop from 3 football fields away. He enlisted in the Army Air Forces in 1941, not as a pilot, but as a mechanic. He had no college degree. He had no social connections. He had never flown a plane. Then the Air Forces hit a critical pilot shortage in 1942 and launched a program allowing enlisted men to become pilots without commissions. Yeager signed up. Instructors doubted he'd make it. Candidates with his background rarely did. But he had something nobody measured: instinct. His eyesight tested at 20/10, twice as sharp as normal. In training, he routinely spotted enemy aircraft before anyone else. He earned his wings in March 1943. By November, he reached England, assigned to the 363rd Fighter Squadron, 357th Fighter Group. He had logged roughly 270 flight hours, far less than many pilots educated at elite universities or trained in civilian flying clubs before the war. Yeager was the soft-spoken Appalachian kid who didn't fit in socially. His P-51 Mustang, tail number 436763, was christened Glamorous Glenn after his girlfriend, Glennis Dickhouse. And on his 8th combat mission, the moment that changed everything arrived. Franciscut's Bf-110 locked onto Yeager's tail with surgical precision. Cannon shells tore through the sky as the German ace closed the distance, setting up a perfect lead-angle kill shot. Every word of Yeager's training told him to stay high where the Mustang held performance advantages and try to rejoin friendly aircraft. Instead, he made a decision that would have gotten him thrown out of pilot school. He rolled inverted and pointed the Mustang straight down, a near vertical dive toward the ground from 7,000 feet. It was madness. Every pilot believed that diving away from a Bf-110 meant certain death. The Messerschmitt's fuel injection system gave it massive advantages in negative-G dives. Doctrine was absolute: never dive away from a German fighter. But Yeager wasn't thinking like a doctrinal pilot. He was thinking like the hunter he'd been since childhood. Play to your weapon's strengths, keep your prey off balance, and use the terrain. The Merlin engine under the Mustang's nose, engineered by Packard from the Rolls-Royce design, reacted differently at extreme speeds than anyone predicted. At over 450 miles per hour, the Mustang began to accelerate faster than the Bf-110. Yeager rocketed toward the earth. The controls stiffened almost to the point of freezing. His vision grayed under the brutal pressure as the aircraft approached 500 miles per hour. Behind him, Franciscut was firing wildly, but falling farther back. Yeager pulled out at 800 feet, so low that the Mustang's wings visibly bowed under the G-load. Franciscut tried to mimic the maneuver, but lost too much speed hauling out of his own dive. The 109 became sluggish and slow. Yeager snapped into an immediate reversal, climbed slightly, slipped directly behind Franciscut, and fired a 3-second burst. .5 caliber slugs ripped the German fighter apart. The 109 spiraled into the countryside. Yeager had unknowingly just created the first high-speed yo-yo in real combat. He didn't know what it was called. He only knew it worked. Back at RAF Leiston, Yeager's after-action account was received with disbelief. Senior officers insisted his memory must have been distorted by adrenaline. German fighters were understood to outdive American aircraft in all circumstances. The gun camera footage was too chaotic to support his story. Major Thomas Hayes summarized the official stance.
A Mustang cannot outdive a Messerschmitt. You are mistaken. But within weeks, similar reports began coming from other pilots. Lieutenant William Wissner escaped two FW-190s with a near-vertical dive and discovered the same speed advantage. More pilots repeated the feat. Finally, in early 1944, celebrated ace Colonel Don Blaxley decided to investigate personally. On January 11th, he took a P-51B to 25,000 feet over the English Channel and executed a string of high-speed dives. The results stunned everyone who saw the data. Below 20,000 feet and above 450 miles per hour, the P-51 out-accelerated and out-maneuvered the German fighters. Blaxley filed a formal report. The response was fury. Commanders who had built careers around rigid doctrine rejected it outright. Heated arguments broke out. Some officers at 8th Fighter Command demanded the findings be buried. Then Major General William Kepner, a fearless, highly respected veteran from the First World War, stepped in. "I don't care what the textbook says," he told the room. "I care about kill ratios." Kepner ordered immediate tactical reform. On February 3, 1944, a directive went out authorizing individual initiative, aggressive energy fighting tactics, high-speed diving attacks, and flexible formations instead of rigid ones. Some senior leaders were horrified, but Kepner had spoken, and in the air war over Europe, his word carried the weight of law. The effect was immediate. February 20, 1944, the beginning of Operation Big Week, the campaign to crush German aircraft production. More than 1,000 bombers crossed deep into Reich territory, protected by P-51s flying under the new doctrine. March 3, 1944, skies above Berlin. Yeager, now with 12 kills, leads 4 Mustangs at 28,000 feet. Below them, 300 B-17s head toward the capital. German fighters rise to stop the raid. Among them is Hauptmann Heinz Baer, with 170 victories, one of the greatest aces in history. Baer begins a climbing attack, using altitude to set up a lethal diving strike on the bombers.
But Yeager spots him first, half a minute earlier than anyone else. Instead of holding formation, Yeager and wingman Clarence "Bud" Anderson roll inverted, dive at full throttle, and accelerate to nearly 600 miles per hour. The German fighters think the Mustangs are retreating. They're not. Yeager and Anderson rocket upward from beneath the German formation. Yeager destroys one 109 in a 2-second burst. Anderson drops a second. The remaining fighters break away in panic. The bombers reach their target untouched. Similar engagements repeat across Germany for months. German pilots accustomed to predictable American maneuvers are suddenly ambushed from impossible angles by blindingly fast Mustangs. The statistics speak for themselves. January 1944, kill ratio 2.1 to 1. April 1944, kill ratio 4.3 to 1. June 1944, kill ratio 6.1 to 1. German diaries record the shock. Ace Johanna Steinhoff wrote, "The Americans have changed their tactics. They dive at terrible speed and attack from below. Our engines give us no advantage anymore. They are faster now." Bomber crews noticed it too. Mission survival soared. What had been a death sentence became survivable. May 8, 1944. Yeager's toughest duel comes against Hauptmann Georg Peter Eder, a 36-victory ace flying the newly upgraded Bf-109 G10. Eder begins with superior altitude. The two fighters meet head-on, trading bursts and missing. Eder expects Yeager to climb to regain altitude. Instead, Yeager pitches down again, another near-vertical dive. Eder follows, convinced he can hold the Mustang in sight,
But at extreme speed, Yeager pulls out sharply and reverses. The G-forces are too brutal for Ader to match. When his vision clears, Yeager is already behind him. A short burst cripples the 109's engine. Ader barely manages to land, but his aircraft is destroyed. Years later, he admitted, "We believed an American fighter could not dive away from a Messerschmitt. We were wrong, deadly wrong." By the summer of 1944, the Luftwaffe was collapsing. Veteran pilots were dying faster than they could be replaced. Inexperienced replacements lasted minutes in combat. The U.S. achieved decisive air superiority. Bomber losses dropped from 20% in 1943 to under 4% by June 1944. Thousands of men lived who otherwise would have perished. After the war, a bomber captain approached Yeager at an air show. "According to 1943 statistics, my crew should have died on our 8th mission. We flew 22 more. My children exist because pilots like you figured out how to keep us alive." The impact didn't stop with World War II. The principles of energy management, boom and zoom maneuvering, and high-speed dive control became the cornerstone of every modern fighter doctrine, from Korea to Vietnam to today's air combat schools. And the man who sparked that revolution kept pushing the boundaries of flight. On October 14, 1947, Chuck Yeager climbed into the Bell X-1 and shattered the sound barrier, the first human to break Mach 1. The same instincts that saved him over Bremen, control of energy, mastery of speed, and absolute willingness to challenge accepted limits were the very instincts required for supersonic flight. A coal miner's son, who nearly died on his 8th mission, became one of the most influential pilots in history.